What's up, YouTube? Today I want to talk about open source software and projects and how it's crucial in the software engineering world. So first off, what is open source? Open source means that the source code is open, and that basically means that the source code is available to the public for free. That just basically means that other people can take a look at the source code, see figure out how it's working or implemented inside, and then they can actually copy and paste that code to use it for their own purposes. Famous examples are like Android. If you have an Android phone, you basically have an open source project running. Chromium, which helps run Google Chrome. WordPress, if you run like a website, that's also like open source project as well. So all these things are open source and they're everywhere and they're typically free. And how does that happen? Let's say you write a code that looks at an image and determines if it's a hot dog or not hot dog. If you upload that code to some website that's publicly available like GitHub, you pretty much made an open source code. Now other people can take a look at the code and replicate the behavior of that code by copy and pasting it to their code to do something else. And depending on the original license you implement your open source code with, they can actually commercialize their app using your open source code. So that's basically open source. You wrote an open source code, and people are using your open source code to do something cool. In contrast, closed source means that the source code is not open to the public. This typically means that the code is used for a proprietary software like Windows or Microsoft Office. I can pay Microsoft to download the software to use it for my own purposes, but I can't download the source code to modify them to make it my own version, like Jeff's cool Excel or Jeff's cool PowerPoint or something like that. Other examples of like closed source could be like video games, Mario Kart, Zelda. Those are all like closed source. And I think this concept of closed source is probably more relatable to most people, right? I think we're all used to just paying for something like a service or goods, food, car wash, internet, games. We all paid for them to so that we can use it. And you might suggest like public roads or like libraries, but we actually pay for that, right, through taxes, so it's not free. So you might be wondering like, why is open source free then? But before I get into that, let me just talk about why open source is like super important in this industry. Open source is crucial because so many things depend on them. This is because nobody writes software from scratch. Like we always start from like smaller building blocks and make something bigger. One example is like people write things called libraries, right? These libraries are written for a very specific purpose, like converting a time in LA to time in Shanghai, or converting like Fahrenheit to Celsius, something very specific. And these libraries act like a building block that help you make something bigger, kind of like Legos. So let's go back to the silly example of the hot dog detector. So I could start writing that software with steps like first load the image, then identify the image, then load the final result, like is it a hot dog or not, into the final screen as a result. And each of these steps might not be like super difficult to implement, but it's probably a problem that somebody else already solved. So there's like a library out there that I could just use instead of like implementing myself. And since the libraries are typically free, this just allows me to use somebody else's code to help me build that hot dog detector app. I don't have to spend the extra time solving the problem that somebody else already did. And you might be thinking like this is like too good to be true, but no, it is true. Many libraries, tools, and frameworks, especially in the web world, is open source. And people and company are able to write apps like TikTok or YouTube because there's so many open source code out there. And the more people there are who write open source code, that just means that other people can contribute to the cycle because it's a compounding effect. Open source libraries can be used in other libraries or frameworks, and those libraries can be used in other libraries as well. So it's just like, it keeps on growing and growing. And the way I see it, this is why open source is free. Even though most people are not getting paid to write open source code, they see the impact it has in the community. Kind of like volunteering. They see the value in providing software for free because it helps other people create something more meaningful. It's like a complete different mindset from businesses. Businesses typically are there to provide goods and services in exchange for money. But for the open source community, majority of the times, the reason is not for money. I might open source a new algorithm that I just came up today to sort words, just because it's fun and fascinating, or I found a better way of doing it compared to like the popular existing method, and I'm just trying to show off, or I just want to help people. I mean, these are all real reasons, and just there's so many reasons out there, and it's definitely not easy work. People spend days, months, sometimes years on maintaining these things. If it's a small library, then one person could be maintaining it. If it's a decent sized like framework, there could be like 10, 20, 50 people maintaining it over the course of like months or even years. So after hearing this, you might be thinking the software world is full of like selfless and dedicated engineers who contribute to like open source projects, and it's not. It is not. There are many problems with the open source projects, and one of them is maintainer burnout. You see, software is never perfect. It's always changing. There might be bugs in the code, or the end users suggest a new feature that might be useful, so the maintainer has to like constantly update the code to accommodate those things. So the sad thing is, the end user is somebody who just downloads the code and uses it for their own purposes, but they can be entitled and be ungrateful for all the work that the maintainer has put in. They can say something like, oh, why is this bug still not fixed? It's impeding some product development. Or like, why doesn't the maintainer answer all these questions on the website? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, I'm complaining because I don't like the thing you made for free, and I'm too lazy to help you out. And unfortunately, this happens a lot. We use open source code on a daily basis, and we just forget to be appreciative. And because of these unsupportive users, maintainers feel like they're being used as like free labor. And they get frustrated and lose the passion that initially drove the development of that project. It's happened to many famous projects, and it's a difficult problem to solve. One remedy to this situation is like the financial support mechanism that the projects implement. Like donations. People can donate to the maintainers to show appreciation for the support and whatnot. And it's kind of like how people throw money at their favorite YouTube and Twitch stars, just to show appreciation. I've done it as well. I've donated some money to these project maintainers just because I use their product or their code on a daily basis. All right, that's it for this video. The concept of open source video was definitely something that I found fascinating when I entered this industry, and I hope you learned something new. And if you like this video, don't forget to click that subscribe button. All right, see ya.